Hey, I'm Mike Myers, and this is the Songwriting for Guitar podcast, which is geared to support songwriters and producers to gain confidence and turn pro. I bring on industry experts to help you improve and monetize your skills, engage better in the writing process, and build healthy habits to create a sustainable career that you love. Caffeinated, inspirational, conversational. What's up, friends? Mike Myers here with the Songwriting for Guitar podcast, episode 112. Our friends from across the pond, Aaron and Duncan of Songwriting Magazine. So right around the beginning of 2024, I connected with Aaron and then later Duncan, and it's been fantastic to get to know them throughout this past year. I've contributed to Songwriting Magazine, had the opportunity to actually meet with them because they were in Nashville. And if you want to experience Nashville hospitality, Southern hospitality, please do it when you have two Brits with you, because you will be bombarded and so much food will be thrown at you that you don't know what to do with it. We were just sitting there, and there was so much food that was delivered, and the looks on their faces of gratitude and also shock, it lives rent-free in my mind. So this episode, we're not going to talk so much about the food. We are going to talk about their magazine's start and some of the fantastic songwriters that they've interviewed. And they've got some amazing plans in the future that you will want to be a part of. So this is an episode that was so much fun to record. I'm glad we could do it. So we're going to dive into it. Episode 112, our friends from across the pond, Aaron and Duncan of Songwriting Magazine. How did you start your magazine? Because, Songwriting Magazine has, been a staple for about 10 years, and you've interviewed countless artists. But before all of that, how did you guys meet, and how did this become, to think of, hey, we're buds, let's do something. Some just go out and be like, hey, on Saturdays, we'll do this. You guys decide, you know what? Let's start up a venture. Let's start up a business and a magazine on songwriting. How did that form?
Well, we're going further back than 10 years ago. I think it was probably about in the late 90s when I first picked up a guitar and fell in love with the art of writing songs. When I picked up a guitar, I didn't want to learn covers. I didn't want to learn how to play Stairway to Heaven or a riff or anything like that. I was just amazed at how Kurt Cobain or, Noel Gallagher or Damon Albarn or Tom York, because I was into sort of Britpop and grunge. And so I was kind of, it just seemed to be this kind of a mystery, this dark art. How do you actually write a song from scratch? When you've got an infinite number of options. That was the thing that really captured my imagination, and I spent quite a bit of time. I was getting into bands and recording my own music. And
what was the name of your first band?
It was what was it? Monica, I think. Monica, as in the word for a name. Monica, Monikeer. Trying to be clever. Didn't go very far, as you can imagine. But we played live and got some stuff played on radio. And then I kind of had a bit of a foray, a very short-lived solo singer-songwriter career. I was living in London at the time, and it's actually got a track released on Fiberline Audio, which was one of the first digital labels. And I got signed to an imprint, an offshoot of Universal. And then obviously that was very exciting. And it was like Spotify had come along, and it was like, get my EP out there. But I made no money. I made absolutely no money whatsoever, and I needed to have a day job. So I kind of ended up falling into sort of sales jobs, sales role, and I moved down to Bath and got a job selling advertising space in magazines, working for a magazine publisher. And there were travel magazines back then, but I was excited by the fact that you're creating something new with every single issue. Every month, you got a chance to kind of pulled together these stories and these interviews and features. And obviously I was only responsible for the advertising side of things. But there was something about it that was just like, this is really exciting. It's really creative and caught my imagination. But I'd love to work with a music magazine. And it just so happened that I found a job working at a magazine called IDJ, International DJ Magazine. And then I was sort of doing a little bit of editorial, but it was mainly still advertising. And then it was just like, I ended up working at Future Publishing on their magazines. So Future Music, music production, guitar magazines. But it occurred to me then, and it was just like, well, why isn't there a magazine for songwriters? And I Googled Songwriting Magazine, and all I found was American Songwriter. And as good a magazine as it was being based in the UK and based in Britain and interested in British songwriters and music, I was just like, this doesn't quite work for me. Wouldn't it be great if there was a British songwriting magazine or a songwriting magazine for people outside the US who aren't American songwriters? Yeah. The rest of the world.
Yeah.
And so I kind of parked that idea. I bought the domain name songwritingmagazine.com and .co.uk and thought I'll come up with a clever name for it at some point. And then when I got the chance to sort of give it a go, I set up the blog and thought, let's see what happens, and was very pleasantly surprised about how many people there are in the world who, like me, wanted to read a songwriting magazine. And I've got to say also another inspiration was Paul Zollo's book, Songwriters on Songwriting, which I read many, many years ago, and I fell in love with, read it cover to cover. And then I was at the end of it, I was like, well, I want more of that. I know he updated the book a few times, but I was thinking, I want this on a regular basis. And surely I'm not the only person who wants to read about songwriters, the craft of songwriting on a regular basis. So that's what sparked the idea for Songwriting Magazine. And then Duncan and I met serendipitously. Duncan, I've talked enough. You pick it up from there. That was about 2013, I think. So we started the website in 2012, around that sort of time. And yeah, I think 2013 we met. Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it probably needs to be said that I wasn't at the start of the venture. So Ron and the previous editor, Russ, and the previous writer, Damo, were kind of the core team when I joined. A mutual friend of ours kind of got in touch with me, and she knew that I wanted to get into writing a bit more, and she knew that Aaron had this publication that I would be interested in. I had a background of working in the music industry through collection societies and record labels. I used to run a little blog a long time ago, and we used to put on live events in London. But then at the time I joined songwriting, I was actually working in the TV industry and was kind of planning to leave that behind to become a freelance writer full time. And any opportunity that kind of came up would be put my way. And this very good friend just happened to be like, well, this is perfect. I mean, you want to write about music, you know about music, and let's see what you guys can do together. So we had a couple of meetings. We got on very well. My trial was to write a couple of album reviews, and having succeeded in that, we then got to grips with being part of the team. And I think then it was a case of working out what actually Songwriting Magazine should be and could be, because coming from backgrounds of publishing like Aaron and the others did, we were all used to music magazines like Rolling Stone and Mojo and the NME, and they're kind of specific things that everyone thinks that you would want or need in a music publication, but they're not necessarily the things that should be in a songwriting publication. So like pages and pages of album reviews and things where, we're all about inspiring songwriters. So then to have 10 pages where we're giving everyone's efforts like 1 star and being really scathing about them just kind of felt like it was, if anything, against the whole remit of what we were here for. And so over the past, I guess, decade, and especially since I've been editor, it's really been a case of working out who we are, what we stand for, and what are the things that we feel are going to serve songwriters in the UK and around the world best. It's not necessarily feeding our egos by getting to speak to the best people out there. It's working out actually who are the people who can either be the most inspiring, the most entertaining, or who actually can relate to the art of songwriting in a way to inspire others. And so that's kind of, since I've joined, that's kind of what I've been trying to do. And then within that, the magazine itself has gone from the website to the digital magazine to the physical magazine. I started just before the launch of the first digital issue, and we are now on to our third physical issue.
Which is amazing. What I find interesting is you resisted to not copy, but I think when some people are starting something, they look at other things that are working and they try to mirror the image of exactly what they're doing. So if you look at something like Rolling Stone, and as you said, Mojo, they're all wonderful, but you didn't try to be like, okay, let's just try to just do what they're doing and do that. But you instead stopped and asked, well, what can we do differently? And what could be an area that's like underserved right now? And that could be a huge benefit. And I think that's a very crucial or at least pivotal point when you're creating something, whether it be your career or even just, a business venture of just like, what is area you could serve really well and then make you stand out and also be part of that collective or that people talk about.
Absolutely, Mike. And I think we were lucky enough not to be part of a big publishing company that had, profits to meet and shareholders to keep happy, and that they can't really afford to take risks, a lot of them. So they've got a sort of tried and tested template, and then it's a case of repeating that and scaling that and continuing to do that. So for me and Duncan, it's just the only limits are on our bandwidth in terms of when we're doing something on our spare time. Because we're doing it on our spare time, it's a case of, but we can do anything. That's the thing. We're not limited. We're only limited by the scope, the availability of time. We've got a very, very long list of ideas that we keep adding to all the time, and think, wouldn't it be great to do this? Wouldn't it be great to do that? Although at the start, my natural inclination was to produce a print magazine, we also held back on that, and we're like, well, no, let's try the digital magazine, because that gives us a bit more freedom to experiment and try something that doesn't cost a huge amount of money and just play with that. And in terms of the format of the magazine, it's evolved, and we've improved the magazine, and we're our 37th issue now, quarterly issue, and we're still making tweaks to it and adjusting it. It's not like we got the same flat plan over and over again. In fact, it's been the first time that we've put together a page plan template to kind of make it more repeatable, but we still want to kind of try and experiment and do things differently and innovate as much as we can.
And from my point of view, it's not about packing the magazine and the website and everything else we offer with all the biggest names. We love to speak to those guys, and I'm sure we'll come to that later. But in my opinion, if there's a songwriter who is doing it for fun, or is at the start of their songwriting career, or just loves songs and wants to find out how people do it, it's not necessarily that helpful to only hear from the people who are playing Wembley Stadium, who are selling millions of records. Like that's brilliant, well done. You've cracked it. But actually, I want to know from the people who are on the next two steps up of the ladder, who are making their way in the live circuit, or who are the bedroom producers who have found a way to do this stuff, or the people who have to kind of, promote themselves and have to market themselves and haven't got that big machine around them. In many ways, those are the features that are actually more important, because people can see themselves doing that. It's a lot harder to see yourself, being Oasis coming back and selling out stadiums and things. That's great. And hopefully everyone will get there. But actually it's a lot more likely that you'll be grafting hard, you'll be playing small venues for a long time, you'll be demoralized about the fact that you can't crack the Spotify algorithm, whatever it may be. And so hopefully by filling our pages with people who have got some way into that, they've dented it a little bit, they're a part of the machine, they're trying their best. Actually, from my point of view, a lot of the time that's more important than just being like, okay, look, we've got 5 of the biggest names in the music industry this issue, go read about how brilliant they are. I like to just show people that the steps on the ladder to get there.
Yeah. I mean, that was the watchword, from the get-go, is a mission about inspiring songwriters. And you can inspire songwriters in lots of different ways. You can show them, look, this is aspirationally what you can achieve, but also this is realistically what you can achieve, because here's someone who's doing it, and they're out there, they're on the front line of the songwriting world, they're just sort of finding their feet, as well as people like Duncan says, who are the big names who are very, very, very successful. And I suppose the other watchword for us is diversity of perspectives. We're genre agnostic. We are wanting to appeal to songwriters across the entire globe, those who are just starting out, those who have been doing it all their life, those who are young teenagers who are just getting into this, versus people who are in their 70s, 80s, who have been doing it all their life. And that is enriching for us. And, putting it together, it's exciting because there's so much variety. But then we hope that then that's enriching for our readers as well, to see that just there's so many different aspects to songwriting. We're very passionate about that.
I think it is something to see someone doing it well and being like, oh my goodness, they're amazing. And it's like, that's all well and good. But I feel better connection is made where it's someone kind of in the messy middle. Like, hey, here's so-and-so, and they are midway through and you have no idea who they are. And they're kind of doing good, but they still have to do XYZ. It's suddenly like, oh, I see myself doing that. Like, that's amazing. And it's inspirational, kind of what you said, when you hear somebody about the struggle, about the process. Like, it's not easy. I have to do this. And guess what? I toured and I don't have any hotels. I sleep pretty much on everyone's floor when I'm touring. And there are all these all ages venues, and they're very, very small, low capacity. Not all of them sell out. And something about hearing someone still do it because they feel like they need to do this. Like, that to me is a much more interesting story than I went and we have 5 sold out shows and catering's wonderful, but they forgot that I don't like these Planters peanuts. I really don't. And I just it's not interesting. It's cool. And it then feeds to like, ugh, I don't want to hear about that. But for you, there's got to be connection into this too, where when you were doing, especially with every issue, I feel it must be like wonderful when something comes out, but then knowing like, okay, it's a lot of work to set everything up. Like, because at this point you said you guys met in 2013. It's 2025. And I think I said this before you started.
It sounds so futuristic that year, doesn't it?
It does. It does sound
It's
futuristic.
sci-fi year.
But at some point, it's clear, as you said, there's no like other company owning you, other board being like, oh, you guys need to write more stories like this because we want to make sure that the profits are this, because eventually we want to sell this and we want to sell it for a greater profit than we bought. You've got none of that. But that also means there's a lot of pressure on you, and you have every opportunity to hit the eject button and just stop.
I mean, from my point of view, I like it because it gives us empathy with the struggles of the songwriters. So there's so many parallels in that we put together a magazine that we're very proud of, but in some ways, who gives a shit? If we don't promote it, if we don't tell anyone about it, it's just me and Ron reading the magazine that we put together in our bedrooms, like a couple of wankers. It's irrelevant. Yeah. And it's kind of similar to the songwriting, right? If you want to get if you want to get your music heard, the process kind of starts at the point that you've written the best songs. And so when we're kind of encouraging people to do that, and when we're giving them advice, it's also things that are very relevant to what we do, to our process. And as I say, the parallels are there, and it makes the struggle very real. It means that we have the empathy. It means that we can kind of understand where everyone's coming from. When we talk about people having a portfolio career these days with their music, about how things like merch is just as important as your product itself, as your songs. Well, we know all that stuff because Aaron and I both have to work numerous jobs as well as doing this. We know that selling the magazine itself is only a small part of our plans and how we can survive and things. So I think, we're in the trenches with those guys. It's not like we're not some great overlord preaching down on our readers. We're very much one of them.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to that being a creative. You're creating. We're just compelled to do this. There's so many times where it's like 2 a.m. and I'm thinking, I don't need to do this. Why am I doing it? It's just where, it's almost like I don't even have a choice. But the same parallels I remember, 20 years ago when I was writing songs and I was just recording a demo, and I'd be the same thing. I'd be totally lost in Cubase or Logic or whatever I was using. Time would fly. Before I realized it, it's like 2 or 3 a.m. I thought, I've got to get up, go to work tomorrow. It's just something that, feel compelled to do, and we get a huge amount of satisfaction out of doing this, knowing that it's not necessarily just my own benefit and its own creative outlet, that hopefully what we're doing is inspiring other songwriters and serving songwriters in a way that I didn't have, when I was starting out. As I say, at Songwriters on Songwriting, I was hungry for insight, information, ways to kind of become better as a songwriter. There are a lot more outlets now, not least your podcast and what you're doing. But, in the late 90s, when barely anyone was even using the internet, you'd go to the library and get a few books, and that was it. How do I become a songwriter? God knows. You maybe just send off a demo and hope for the best. And it was just a lottery.
Cross your fingers and be like, "This is the one. This is the one."
Yeah. So it feels good to be part of that support system, and hopefully our readers get a lot of value from it.
So since you've had a wide variety of people that you've talked to, artists and songwriters, not necessarily top tier, but in the sense of top tier have to be your favorite. What have been some of your favorite stories or things that you felt like, I didn't know this was going to resonate as much as it did, and like you were surprised with it?
Ooh, can you go first, Duncan? we have given this some thoughts, because I think we tried to look at how many people we've interviewed.
Yeah.
And it's about 1,000 at least.
It's got to be more than that.
It could be thousands.
Which is wonderful, because it's just like...
which is amazing.
It is amazing, because you start to see parallels, you start to see similarities or stories of just like continuing problems or like things that come up. Yeah, I'm just curious. Yeah. And it can be any of those, any of those 1,000.
Like any good sixth former who hasn't revised for an exam and is going to answer a different question to the one that you asked. I am going to say that, for me, the most rewarding thing is when someone is able to answer the question of how they write a song in a way that someone else can take something from. Because so many people that we speak to are at a stage in their career where either they genuinely think, or it genuinely happens, that I don't write a song, the songs write themselves, or the songs just arrive, and therefore I can't tell you how I do it. And
I hate that answer. That is the only where people give that. I'm just like, oh.
Yeah, and exactly that. So I think my job doing Songwriting Magazine is getting behind the curtain and actually seeing all the workings on that go on before people get to the point where a song just arrives. I've said this many times before. I'm never walking around our version of Target with my trolley, and all of a sudden the best song ever never written just lands in my trolley or my basket, and I take it home and the song's written itself for me. So it's about how these people have the tools and the expertise to get to that point. And it's interesting for me, because I'd say despite the fact there's a banjo and a mandolin on the poster behind me, I'd say that my favorite forms of music is kind of indie rock, I guess you would say. But a lot of the indie artists we speak to don't want to let you see behind the veneer. They want you to think that they don't try hard, that that there's no real work that goes into their songs, or they don't want to think that they don't want to expose any lack of formal training, which we're not really interested in, or that they care too much about what they do. So those guys are quite hard to interview. Whereas you'll find that other genres, country music, perfect example, they love to talk about the process. They love to kind of give away as much of the secrets as they can. Also, I find heavy metal as well, maybe because those guys feel like their work is slightly underappreciated in terms of the craft and the way they go about it. They mostly love to talk about the songwriting process. So where we've had people, I'm just going to go with the big one, like Dolly Parton, for example. She was very easy to get to talk about her process because she absolutely loved talking about songwriting. I think, for her, maybe she doesn't get asked about her songwriting enough. And so to be able to actually hear someone as big as her be able to explain the process in a way that's helpful was a huge deal. Also, I had her sing both Jolene and I Will Always Love You down the phone to me, which kind of felt like someone had treated me to the ultimate cameo experience. So I think that's my answer, is the people who are able to explain the process in a way that it isn't a song just arrives. Those are the times that I feel most fulfilled as an interviewer working for, our readers.
Well, because it's one of the, like, that sort of answer is like when someone goes, how did this happen? Oh, it just happened and I found money.
Yeah.
It's the dumbest, it's the worst story because it's terrible. But when you hear a little bit more of like, oh, the first time I didn't get it and it was a terrible song. But then the second time I realized I had to really focus on not getting tripped up on the second verse. That connects with people going like, oh shit, I get tripped up on the second verse all the time. Okay, so it's okay. It's not just a me thing. This is just, it's part of the process. And I have to stick with it.
Yeah, I mean, like with the songs itself, a specific becomes universal.
Yeah.
How about you, Ron?
Yeah, I mean, you dropped the big name there, bang. How do I follow Dolly? I mean, yeah, I've had the pleasure of interviewing some heroes of mine, as well as very well known people. But what I find interesting, and I think the names that I'm going to mention, what they have in common is when you speak to them, you realize that actually it's not easy. It's a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
It's more perspiration than inspiration. And the three that come to mind is Diane Warren, who, obviously, you need to look at discography to see just how prolific she's been and how successful over so many decades. But she was, essentially she was talking about how she keeps going back to her kind of her little room where all her kind of cassettes and everything like that. It's pretty much, she essentially said nothing's really changed in that room since the 1980s. She's kept it pristine. Well, not pristine, the opposite of pristine. Like some sort of antique that's been kept in a museum. But the fact that it's just where it's her little workshop. And she goes to work, and the quote was, "Work hard, show up. That's what's worked for me. I just love what I do." And very easy for someone like that to say. There's quite a lot of magic and skill and expertise that goes into it rather than just graft. But then someone like Gary Barlow, interesting to speak to him, because he was talking about how he kind of geeks out and he gets into the studio, and he's got to be careful not to sort of play around with some plugin and then hours pass and he's not actually written a song. So he has a kitchen timer that he sets for like 20 minutes. And he go, right, I'm going to work on a vocal now. I'm going to do comping some vocals, but for 20 minutes. And then it goes and then forces himself to kind of go on to something else and keep the creative process going. And I thought that was a really interesting, useful lesson, that because it's very easy to sort of get lost in the music and then, you spend hours and then you've come out with nothing. Whereas a lot of these songwriters who are very, very successful, commercially successful, are very aware of their time and being able to switch it on, but also deliver. And I think that's the key thing. It's not just kind of, let's just have a jam session for 10 hours and see what happens. It's like, no, we're going to go into a session and you've got me for 2 hours and we are going to nail a song. We've got to, there's no two ways about it. And that discipline, that's the word I was thinking of, that a lot of these big names share, not least my most recent big name songwriter, Ryan Tedder, who is gracing the cover of our latest issue. He was someone who's been on the wish list for a very, very long time because, although he's a very well-known artist in his own right, with One Republic, I knew that he was a very successful behind-the-scenes songwriter. And people like Max Martin or Diane Warren are the sort of people that I would love to interview, the ones who aren't necessarily the ones ending up singing the songs that they write and being performers, but are relatively unknown and shining a light on that. Not that they need any more credit, I suppose. They get plenty of credit and the royalty checks come through. Give them a nice pat on the back. But, for us, that's our kind of raison d'etre. That's about it. We want to champion and shine a light on songwriters. But Ryan Tedder was talking about how he has a hustler mentality. He looks for an opportunity to write a song or pitch a song, and he goes for it. And it was great when we was kind of just name dropping Tom Cruise when he was talking about writing the song for the Top Gun Maverick soundtrack. And I was just talking about, we had a Zoom call with Tom and he was telling me about the movie. And the thing was, they were on that call, Tom Cruise and director, I've forgotten his name. They were just talking about the movie and talking about the scene and just to sound them out. And Ryan went, well, yeah, I got it. Went off. Literally the next day, sent them a track.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, you already had this, I guess, in the back. No. I assume, I've got from what you were saying that this is what you're trying to achieve from the scene. And so wrote this song basically within 24, 48 hours.
But it's amazing that it's like, someone like Ryan Tedder and some of the people that you've interviewed still have to work hard. There's this notion that it's just like, Tom Cruise calls up and says, hey, whenever you can get it to me, that's totally fine. Don't worry about me. But he still treats it with the seriousness of like, no. I'm going to be super quick. I'm going to be super focused. Someone, like time management and allocating, being good steward of your time that, if I'm going to work for 20 minutes, it's going to be on this specific thing. And you're destroying that myth of songwriters being like, hey, we're going to get in the studio. We'll see what just happens. The magic is happening. No magic happens except people just fucking around their instruments. Nothing goes on. And then you've wasted a bunch of time and you're like, well, I guess it just wasn't meant to be, guys. The muse didn't visit us today. We'll try again tomorrow. And it's just like, that's the worst way to write a song.
Hey, let me ask you a question, Mike. Who would be the songwriter that you would most like to interview?
I'd probably go with Butch Walker.
Okay.
I think Butch Walker, because you didn't say living or dead. So I assumed it was just living right now. So it's like, I have to stick with living. I think Butch Walker, because he's probably one of the most versatile, when I think of someone who's a super like hustler, but started out in a ton of hair metal bands, was playing all throughout high school. When he graduated, immediately moved to LA, was in a bunch of bands, then was constantly reinventing himself too. As soon as like his one band died, then he did the Marvelous Three. That had a huge single. And then eventually labels started coming to him. Well, who produced that? Well, I did. Who wrote that? I did. Okay. Can you do it for these bands? And he just started going through that process. But he seems like a no bullshit guy too. Like he purely loves the craft. He loves helping people. And I've seen him live and he's amazing. And it's so much fun. But I think that would definitely be on my list of songwriters. And I think if it was dead, I'd probably go with either Bach or no, I'm serious. I think Bach is I think he's basically like a pop songwriter, but for like the Baroque period, because like
the original
where it was like literally he had to play. And if it was catchy, you remembered it. If you didn't, you didn't. And yet we all can hum Toccata and Fugue in D minor because we think it's spooky. But it's like, it's something to be said about that. It's weird. And I think I would probably it's a tie between George Harrison or John Lennon. I don't know who would win or do that. I think I would go with Harrison because I think he would have some interesting stories and like just being in the background. But I digress. There's so much that's happened and it's hard to encompass everything that y'all have experienced over time and have created. But what makes you excited for everything in the future? Because you can look back at the things you've done, but I feel when you create things or when you're doing a venture and it's your business, you also get excited about the things that you're thinking about creating and starting.
Oh yeah, but both of us suffer from shiny penny syndrome. Like we're very much standing still, is moving backwards, and that's part of the frustration. So we definitely have that when we're looking forward. Sometimes a little bit too much. Ron, I'll let you go first, though.
I think not last year, but the year before was a bit of a pivotal moment in several senses of the word, where we found up until that point, I was being led by my experience of the publishing model. So even though, as I said, we were kind of not necessarily constrained by being part of a big publishing company and following that path, that was my only frame of reference. So I was thinking, right, what we need to do is we need to publish a print version of the magazine. We need to get that on sale on the newsstand, and we need to print thousands and thousands of them, put them out there and promote that. And that's what we've got to do. And there's no other option. So for many years, we were looking at ways of funding that, ways that we can get the magazine on the physical newsstand. Then we realized that actually we could follow the subscription model in a sense like software does with say Netflix or those sort of services. You've got subscribers, but they're not subscribing to one thing. They're getting a lot more bang for their buck. They're getting more for the more value. And so then it was just like, oh, it doesn't have to just be a magazine. What we can do is we can offer other services, other channels, a podcast. We can offer discounts. We can offer partnerships, other ways that we can get the content out there. We've got our website. Let's make the most of that. We've got the digital magazine. Let's have a print magazine as well, but we can be publishing books. We could do anything and everything. In doing so, that led us to explore membership options. So that's what we launched in 2023. And so to answer your question in a very roundabout way, Mike, looking forward, it's about adding value and doing more. So subscribers aren't just subscribing to the magazine. They are getting more in terms of support, instructive content, inspirational content, ways that they can become better as songwriters. But also the key thing for us, it was about kind of enabling songwriters to put themselves in a better position to be whatever is their measure of success, whether that's become a professional songwriter or be able to enter competitions or get their music heard, or if they want to be a performing songwriter, release music. And we want to be able to enable that. So looking forward, it's about adding layers of support and content within the scope of what we can achieve as two people doing it in our spare time.
As two idiots doing it in their spare time. I mean, for me, I think maybe if we say things now, then we're going to have to do them. So I feel like I can drop us in it by saying some examples. For example, we're hoping we will launch some kind of a community platform like a Discord this year, so that our members can communicate with each other and we can communicate with them in a different way, leading to collaborations and opportunities. We've also got this great songwriting mentor called Mike Myers lined up, who's going to come on and do a live workshop with some of our songwriters.
He doesn't know that yet.
Ron mentioned Ryan Tedder and The Hustle. I kind of like The Hustle as well. I'm not our attack dog. I'm more of our kind of friendship puppy, in that Ron will tell us something that, like, he'll say, I want to interview this person this year, or I want to do this, and then he kind of sends me out to go and roll over and show them my tummy and get tickled and get them to come on. I kind of like going out and making things happen for us. So that's always one of the big motivations for me, and also just speaking directly with our members. I love it when we get to give them song feedback or help them with a songwriting problem, and just have that one-on-one communication with them. I mean, if we had gone down that original plan and just sent out thousands of copies to all the news agents in the country, we definitely wouldn't have that. So this way, with the membership, it's so much more intimate, so much more detailed. And so that, the more of our members that get in touch with us to have a chat or to help us with something, or for us to help them with something, we like to include them in the magazine from time to time. We do some song feedback for them. We offer lots of different services, and the more of that we can do this year, the better. I mean, do we currently have the new issue in your house yet, Ron?
No. I was teasing you then.
You haven't received it yet?
It's on its way.
It's on its way.
So
the most recent issue is still our Nashville issue, which with your good self in it. But very soon the Ryan Tedder issue will be in Ron's house to then be sent around the world to all our subscribers. So I always look forward to that, because I'm the last person to receive the copy.
I'm the last one.
That's it. Thing is, mentally, we kind of, when we've done an issue, it's just like, it's such an all-encompassing, exhausting kind of moment that it's kind of like, and then it was just like, on to the next one. And then we're already kind of going, oh yeah, we could have this on, we could line up this, and yeah, we're off on to the next issue.
How long does it usually take for you to compile an issue?
The whole
3
thing. Months. It takes 3 months. Yeah, it's quarterly. We have toyed with the idea of being more frequent, but I just, that would break us, I think. We're just about we just about managed to get it over the line every 3 months. Sometimes we're kind of way ahead of schedule, but there's always something that seems to mean that we're frantically rushing around at the last minute. So,
yeah.
So if someone's listening to this, which I think, lots of people are, and they're like, this is amazing. So how do I join? Like, what do I have to do? And what's the next step?
Well, the simplest and easiest answer is songwritingmagazine.com and .co.uk. And there you'll be taken. There's tons of content. There's about 4,000 articles on there. So there's loads and loads of free content on there for songwriters to read to their heart's content. But also that'll steer them through to member area, shall we say. However, what we've set up is an exclusive offer for Songwriting for Guitarists listeners, subscribers, anyone who hears this.
Anyone listening to your voice,
we'll put a link
right
down
now
there.
Is here. So there is a link that you're including with the discount, which is amazing, which they can immediately jump in. Yes. And especially all the back issues, they can start going in, they can start reading.
Do I have to point down as you both pointed down, I'll do the same.
I know. It's just like right now, there's nothing there. We're just assuming, we're trusting that eventually links will be present.
Yes.
So as well as
absolutely.
So you get the website completely unpaywalled. You get the quarterly digital issue. You get all the back issues. You get the podcast that we do. You get some exclusive giveaways that we do for our members. You get to chat with us and anything else we decide to throw your way in the next 12 months, some of which we have just announced, so therefore will definitely happen.
We'll have to.
This is amazing. I mean, just in this chat, if they get to chat with you guys, it's fun. I can say like our brunch was still one of my favorite things because it was just with all the food that we got, it lost track. I think they eventually had to bring another table.
Yeah.
Shout
out to Biscuit Love.
As a pathetic vegetarian who just sat there and enjoyed a plate of French toast and a biscuit on the side, Aaron probably ate a whole horse that morning so that I didn't have to.
I sampled the entire menu. That's not much of an exaggeration. While Mike drank most of the
I drank all their coffee. Yeah, I did. What can I say?
I want to quickly add something which is not relevant to any part of this conversation, for you can choose to cut in on it or cut out. But you mentioned in your flow about what were some of the hurdles we face along the way.
Yeah.
And this isn't a hurdle we face along the way, but my favorite thing that happens is when we get sent a songwriter to speak to Songwriting Magazine, and then we get on the call with them and we say, "Hi, I'm Duncan from Songwriting Magazine. We're going to talk to you about songwriting." And then they say, "Oh, yeah, sorry, no, I don't like to speak about songwriting." And you're like, okay. I mean, what part of the process whereby you approached us, asked to speak about songwriting, we agreed, set up the call, and then did the call? Did you think we weren't going to speak about songwriting? I kind of feel like, Ron said he wanted to come up with a cleverer name, but, we do what we say on the tin.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious.
And so we have quite a lot of times, but often what those people think is that we're going to ask them their favourite chord, their favourite scale, whether they know about, fifths or ninths.
Yeah.
And then they get a bit nervous about that. And actually, once we reassure them that isn't really what we're here for, and that we talk about that in our technique section, but in terms of the interviews, I'm not going to press them on what they know about that stuff. That often 9 times out of 10, they will relax and can be very revealing about actually their process. But this isn't an example of someone who didn't want to speak about songwriting, but there's a British songwriter called Sean Ryder who has been in the bands Happy Mondays and Black Grape. And he told me a great story about how when he has ideas for songs, he writes them on scraps of paper and keeps them in a teapot down his local pub. And then occasionally when he needs to go for a song, he'll go and retrieve them, and then he'll turn them into a song. And it's like, well, there you go. I mean, that's brilliant stuff. I'd much rather talk about why you're putting scraps of paper in a teapot in a pub than anything to do with, your chords or your scales or any of that really technical stuff. I think
because
only
it's much more
one.
interesting to be like, why did you think of that? And be like,
Yeah,
shit,
yeah.
I can't think of any ideas. You know what? I found this teapot. I'm just gonna go down here for a drink and just start throwing just ideas in here. And when I need it, I'll just figure out and I'll get an idea.
Exactly that.
An
And only
excuse to
one.
go to a bar.
I'm not going to name this person. I'm not going to say why.
Go on.
Go.
But only one person ever has we didn't manage to get past the impasse of them saying, I don't like to speak about songwriting. And so therefore, any question I asked about songwriting, they refused to answer for about 10 minutes. And then we had to call the whole thing off. It was very interesting. But in the thousands of interviews we've done with so many giving and interesting and funny and lovely people, that's only happened once. I think we're doing okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one thing that worth saying is that, I think people just love talking about songwriting. There's so many times where we've spoken to a PR and talked about, or management or whatever it might be. And they won't want to talk about that song or writing that song. Oh, no, they're sick to death talking about that. And then you go, fine, I won't talk about it. And then you get on a call with them and you actually speak to them and you go, I've heard that you probably didn't want to talk about this, and they're like, no, I'm more than happy.
I love it.
I'd love to talk about it. Yeah. Fire it. Let's go. Let's talk about it. And one thing I should reiterate, because I thought this was what you were going to say as a hurdle or a bugbear, Duncan, is we are Songwriting Magazine. It's about the act of songwriting. We are referred to on many occasions as Songwriter Magazine or Songwriters Magazine. We are for songwriters, but we are called Songwriting Magazine.
You're like, there's an ing in the name.
There's an ing. It's the verb. It is the act of writing songs.
You have to not look at the rest of the magazine and then make something up in your head.
Yeah. I had a great time being interviewed by Songwriter Magazine. Did you? Did you really?
Who are they?
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we've been so lucky to speak to so many songwriters. I mean, just incredible to hear the stories behind some of the most famous songs ever written, speak to some of the most successful songwriters, and speak to some of those like brave souls who are out there doing it in 2025 when the world of songwriting is probably harder than ever. I mean, it's a genuine privilege to do what we do and to give something back to the songwriting community. And
absolutely,
no matter how many frustrations we have, it's not something that either of us will ever stop doing. I don't think.
Before we close out this episode, Aaron and Duncan wanted to do something special for my audience. So they are giving you an exclusive discount to a subscription of Songwriting Magazine. Now, to claim this, all you have to do is go down to our description of this episode. You'll see a little link to join, and boom, you are in. You're going to get access to all the back issues, all the future issues. There's tons of gold in this membership. So all you got to do, just go down to our description of this episode, click that link to join. And that does it for this week's episode. I'm Mike Myers. Thanks for listening.